Hi everyone, welcome. So today I'm going to be going over some interviewing tips that I think you may find helpful when preparing for your interview for pharmacy school. So you may be asking, why do I have to complete an interview as part of the application process for pharmacy school? When you think about doing an interview, try not to get too nervous because it really is only one part of the application process. It's a pretty important part though, so it's always good to be as prepared as possible. An interview is a great chance for you to showcase how you are a qualified candidate to the program that you're applying to. But it's not just that. It's also a chance for the institution to show you why you should want to choose them. You should always bring a list of questions that you have to the interviewers so that you can learn more about the school and the program. The answers to their questions can really help you figure out whether or not this program is going to be the best fit for you. So the first thing that you have to think about as part of the interview process is responding to the initial invitation. Try to respond quickly and politely, even if you are declining. If you've decided that you no longer are thinking about going to that school, or for whatever reason you want to decline the invitation, that is fine. But you want to try and do that as quickly as possible while still being polite so that the school can offer up that slot to another student. If you do decide to accept the application or the invitation, know that you're going to probably spend a big chunk of the day on campus for the interview. You're not just probably going to be doing the interview that day. You may also be in a campus tour. You may sit in on a student panel, and you may also have like a writing assignment. So you're going to be there for a while. So depending on where you're coming from, you may end up wanting to stay overnight the day before. Your interview day is probably going to start relatively early, probably 7, 8 a.m. So it may be a better idea for you to stay in a hotel in the area than travel all the way from home. So there's some things that you can do to help prepare for the interview, and one of the most important ones is to do your research. You want to be as informed as possible before going into the interview. So this means doing research about the school so that you're knowledgeable about that program. It also doesn't hurt to try and keep up to date on related topics and issues in your field of study because it's always possible you may be asked a question that has to do with that. You should also be prepared to answer a variety of different types of questions. There's a good chance that you're going to be asked some of the standard interview questions such as what are your strengths, your weaknesses, why you are applying to that school. But you may also be asked other types of questions that help the interviewers to learn about your leadership skills as well as any types of volunteer opportunities that you've had thus far. So you may be asked questions about your hobbies, your study habits, your goals for the future, or even maybe asked to describe some situations that have led you to reevaluate or reflect on yourself. Another important part of preparing for an interview is to think about the dress attire for that day. This is your first impression, so you want to be as professional as possible. So this means wearing clothes that are neat, clean, and appropriate for an interview. So for men, this means coats and ties and polished dress shoes. For women, pants or skirt suits, dresses with jackets are also fine, and then dressy but comfortable shoes. If you do end up wearing a skirt or a dress, make sure that you watch the hemline because you need to make sure that it's an appropriate length. And you really, really want to make sure that your shoes are comfortable because, like I said, there's a good chance you're going to maybe go on a campus tour. You may be walking or doing a lot of standing around. So you want your shoes to be as comfortable as possible while still professional looking and dressy for whatever you're wearing. Try not to wear too heavy of makeup or cologne and perfume because you don't want to overwhelm anyone that you're around. In this case, less really is more. And it may also be helpful to bring some type of professional bag with you so that you can carry around your portfolio, a copy of your resume, and you can also put any information that you get throughout the day in there. So this could, you may get a folder with some information or like some flyers about the program or the campus, and it'll be better to put those in a bag than to try and be juggling them in your hands all day. And of course, always be prepared for bad weather. You should probably bring an umbrella with you just in case it starts to rain. Depending on the season, you may want to bring an extra coat so that you're not freezing, especially if you go on one of those campus tours. So this picture showcases some appropriate attire for both men and women for an interview. Notice that the women's skirts go all the way down to their knees, so they're an appropriate length. But also notice that their shoes probably aren't super comfortable for standing and walking around a lot. So instead of wearing heels like that, you may want to opt for like a shorter and a thicker heel, or just instead go for flats. So some tips that you can use the day of the interview. Obviously, you do not want to be late. You really want to be on time because, like I said, this is your first impression. So in order to help with that, it's probably a good idea to look up the directions and the parking information of the location of your interview before that morning. So whether this means looking them up from your house if you're coming from home, or like if you're staying in a hotel in the area, looking it up from the hotel. You want to make sure you know how to get where you're going, you know where you're parking, you know if you have to walk a decent amount from the parking lot to the building. Doing all of those things is going to help you be on time. You also should be mindful of any traffic delays. So again, depending on where you're coming from, you may get stuck in traffic. So it's a much better idea to leave pretty early, give yourself a lot of time just in case you get stuck in traffic, because if you get there early, that's a lot better than being late. Conducting yourself the day of the interview, it's not just during the questioning phase of the interview. You want to remain professional throughout the entire day because you're really making an impression on everyone you interact with, so you should be professional with everyone. This can include any student volunteers from the campus, the tour guides, and even the other prospective students. You want to be professional with all of them because it can have an effect on your evaluation. I know it's easier said than done, but you also really want to try to stay relaxed and calm throughout the day. It can be really difficult to do that, especially as it gets closer to your interview time, but doing so is really going to make your experience on campus a lot better. If it's helpful for you, you can try to look up some breathing exercises that you can easily do whenever your nerves are getting the better of you. Also, be mindful of your body language during the interview. You don't want to be slouching, and you don't want to engage in any of those nervous habits like nail biting or leg shaking, so just be aware of that whenever you're interviewing. During your interview, you should always be honest to the questions. You never want to lie about what's on your application or what you're saying during the interview. If you don't know the answer to something, it's much better to just be honest and say, I don't know, than to give any type of false information. That being said, if you get stuck during the interview on a question, try not to panic. It is totally fine for you to take a moment to collect your thoughts, take a deep breath. The interviewer is not going to dock points off for you taking a minute or two to reflect before answering. After you've had that minute or so, just try to answer the question as best as you can. And again, if that means honestly saying I don't know, that's what you should do instead of lying or trying to give false information. So after the day of the interview, it's a really good display of manners to write a thank you note, unless you're specifically prohibited from doing so. So you could be collecting business cards throughout the day that have the contact information for anyone that you think you may want to mail one of these letters to, and then do so afterwards. It may also be helpful for you to reflect on how well you feel you did during the interview so that you can improve for next time. When doing this, though, try not to scrutinize what you think the interviewer was thinking about you, because honestly, there's no way for you to know. Just try to think about how well you think you did and ways that you think you can improve. Also keep in mind that final decision times may vary from program to program. It's always appropriate for you to ask when you can expect to hear a decision about your application, but just remember that the timelines for different universities are probably going to vary. I hope that you have found all of these tips helpful and some things that you think that you can do to help prepare for your interview for pharmacy school.